All right, so in this lesson, we're going to be creating this animation right here. This is going to be our first step into geometry nodes. And the whole kind of concept behind this one is relatively simple once you get a full grasp of geometry nodes. I'm going to be taking my time throughout this entire building process of this, but in my own personal work, I do this a lot and it's very quick. I mean, this is something I set up just like that to set up the sort of basis of a project, basis of an environment, and then I'm moving very quickly through it. So this is something once you get a grasp on it and really understand it and get used to it, you can do it very, very quickly. And I love this process. I mean, it's why I really made it kind of the first geometry nodes lesson, is because I'm doing it so much. So with that being said, let's hop into it. All right, so we're going to be in a blank document here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and hit Shift A, and we're going to implement just a plane. Now, he isn't actually meant to exist sort of physically to be seen. He exists to house the geometry nodes project inside of it that we're going to build from it. So if you're someone that likes to, title your stuff, feel free to title it, but we won't have much in the outliner anyway for this project. So with that being said, we are going to hop right into the geometry nodes workspace and get this going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kill this window and then have these two windows here. This will be kind of my default setup normally. It changes. It can either be on the bottom or the side. I'm going to hit in. All right, so now we have this guy and we are in the geometry nodes workspace, and we will click new. This group input right here, he is sort of the node embodiment of this guy and his geometry, right? So if I subdivide it, there's now 4 faces that this group input represents. But again, like I said, we don't need this. We just want to be able to start a geometry nodes tree. So we're going to go ahead and delete the input, and everything that we build within this is our input. So if you had something in here, like you already pre-built something cool, say like this, and you click new, then you can then add things to it, right? Like, so you can split edges, and then you can do scale elements. You don't have to follow along this. Sort of represent. Now you can take already existing, geometry and then edit it within geometry nodes. But in our case, we are simply creating a new input completely node-based. So we're going to get a grid, G-R-I-D. So we're going to hit Shift A. And what's cool about 4.0, depending on when you're watching this course, maybe it's common knowledge by now, you don't actually have to click search. You can just hit Shift A and then do, G-R-I-D, grid. And we're going to plug him right here. So now that we're here, let's go ahead and we're going to use my scroll wheel up here and go to the wireframe view. And you can see where it says 3 vertices. We can do 1, so it's just, one thing here. But in this case, we're going to subdivide it, and you can actually manually subdivide within geometry nodes. So that is the beauty. This is grid. It's a plane. The grid is a plane, but in this case, you can actually, it's a non-destructive subdivision. And so what we'll do, I'm just going to keep this something light for now. And let's talk about scale. So if you want to scale your grid within geometry nodes, say, I want it to be 10 by 10. Well, it makes sense that you would just type in 10, but that didn't actually scale it by 10, because if I go here into the viewport and I click on a plane and I hit S10, it's twice the size now. So rule of thumb is whatever is here, it is half the size of that if you want to be here, right? So if I want it to be 10 by 10, we're going to type in 20. I like 10 by 10. I'm comfortable with that. It's something that it's a size that I like because lights are going to react to it in a way that I understand, that I'm used to. So I usually know if something's wrong. So we are going to be 20 by 20 here on the grid. And then on our vertices, what you can do is I'm going to click and drag. And on my original file, I did 58. So now if we go to the wireframe view, we can see lots of little cubes, lots of things going on here, and we're ready to move on. Now, the next step is to create a displacement system. And I want to make a displacement system within geometry nodes because the more you do within here, the more controlled it is. It is going to take longer. We could use a displacement modifier, and it would make things more simple. But being able to do it in here, the more you get better at geometry nodes, the more you're going to be glad you knew how to create this, because it opens up more editable possibilities. So the node, the little gatekeeper, I like to call these gatekeeper nodes. This gatekeeper node to displace is a set position node. The gatekeeper is now going to allow us to displace. So let's go ahead and use a noise texture to displace this. So NOI, noise texture, plug it into the offset, and look, we have some displacement. But let me show you a big problem that just occurred. So we're going to go ahead and get a vector math node, VEC, vector math, and we're going to go from add to multiply. And if you're not very good at vector math stuff, these operators are the most easy to understand. Multiply just simply multiplies anything that's going into it. So in this case, we're going to multiply the displacement. So you probably just saw the problem that we're about to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag and see that that's not very good looking at all. I'm going to go ahead and bring my detail down and maybe bring our scale to 0.4. What is going on? Well, what's going on is it is directionless. It doesn't really know exactly where to displace, so it's displacing it on all axes, which is why, hey, let's just use a displacement modifier. It has all that figured out for us. But let's go ahead and understand it. I'm going to go ahead and I just hit Control and right click to slice that. See these right here? I want to be able to just displace on the Z, but it's actually displacing on everything. See that? That is the motion that we just witnessed. If we offset it on all axes at the same time. So what would be nice is if we had a little blue thing on each X, Y, and Z so we can control them individually. We don't have that. I don't know why we don't have that, but we don't. Maybe, there's usually when I have questions like that, there's usually a good reason. But there is a node that will open that up for us, and that's going to be a combine XYZ node. So COMB, combine XYZ, and then we'll just plug vector into offset. Now, imagine that this is connected to the set position, and we now have, these little blue guys, but they're gray here. We now have access to just the Z, but we have a way to plug into it. And that's what's important here, is our ability to plug into that Z to solely influence the Z. And let's plug that multiply right into the Z, and boom, have proper, normal looking displacement. And then you can always displace on multiple, different axes, or you can plug it into all three and make it look bad again. But in this case, we just want to plug it into the Z. I'm going to bring our scale to 1. Now, a fun thing is if you don't want to have to click and drag every single time, which I really do. I do click and drag every single time. But if you want to have a better user experience, go ahead and get a value node. So Shift A, search value, plug value into vector, and then it'll control all of them, all three of those at once. A little bit of, I don't know, a lifesaver for you, I guess. All right, now I want to get something here to start to manipulate our texture to look the way I want it to look. And so we're going to go ahead, Shift A, search color ramp. And you'll start to see throughout this course, I use the color ramp constantly when I'm playing with noise textures. The alternative is a map range. It technically is a better option. I don't like it because it's not visual. I like that I can see my black and white. I'm dyslexic. I'm a visual learner. I like to have this visual cue of what's actually going on. I can see these two are close together. On the map range, technically you can see, oh, they're numerically close. That's not the way my brain works. So in case, if you're one of those map range boys, more power to you. All right, so we put the color ramp here, and you saw what it just did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crunch in this color ramp to get this variation in the way it looks. And then you can see we're going to go from 3D to 4D. And if this is your first time seeing the W is an animatable seed value, which makes kind of sense for it. So here we go. I'm actually going to go up here at the drop down, and we're going to do outline, cavity, and shadow, just so we can see it better. So this is now animating, right? And we have this color ramp making it look a certain way, right? So you can see when I take the black portion, it flattens it out at the bottom. And then we take the white portion, it flattens it out at the top, which gives us this slope. So the larger space in between these two, the less steep that slope is going to be. Now, what you are seeing is a view of this texture on geometry, but I want to kind of help you understand what's actually going on here. So I'm going to hide him for a second. What you're seeing is happening is here. So I set up just the noise texture. I set up the noise texture to, whenever we bring the color ramp to the side here, it's doing this. So in our case, the black portion is the part of the geometry that's going on the ground, and the white portion is part of the geometry that's going up. So you can see that. White, up, black, lower, right? And so when we bring this in, you're starting to get a more dramatic feel. And you could see this gradient right here. So when it's just a hard color, which means there's no other color, it's just that one value, this white and this black, it will be flat. And then once you start to see a change in that color, it becomes softer color, and it is transitioning from darker to darker, you are going to get that slope. So that's what's happening in sort of color, and we don't really have a way to view that geometry node, so I'm showing you on a shader node. And they're all related. So if we do this, you would get a bigger slope here. So back to geometry nodes here, that is what we're viewing. So, and this is going to greatly influence the way that our animation is going to look based on this color ramp. And then you can see it's doing this, right? So it's going up and down and having a lot of fun on this W seed value. I'm going to bring that W back to 0. So now we have all of this, and you have your strength here with the multiply and the value node, and we have all of this fun stuff going on for us. What I want to do now is start to put some objects in here. So what we're going to do is get in a instance on points. So Shift A, search INST, instance on points. And if you don't know what a point is, in this case with geometry nodes, a point is this thing right here. So if we go to wireframe, a point is where these cross sections exist, and this is a face. So if we wanted to instance something on a face, it would show up here. If we want to instance something on a point, it would show up here. So that is important to know depending on what you're doing. So we're going to slide in our instance on points, and what we can do now is get an object to instance. So we're going to hit Shift A, we're going to get in a cube, and we're going to put this cube right here on our instance. And now he's going to show up right up here. I hate all this yellow ugliness. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. So now we have all of this fun stuff, and we want to change the scale of these cubes to look nice. So what we're going to do is we're just going to I'm going to click on this value node here and hit Shift D, and to prevent you from needing to click and drag every time. So let's bring that value down till they're just here. Now, here we go. Now there's a problem here with geometry nodes, is that we do not have a bevel node. And if I bevel this whole thing up here in the modifiers, it's going to present problems. If you want to add more things to here, then it'll break. But what we can do is hit Shift A here in the viewport, hit Shift A, go to mesh, get a cube. I'm just going to hit G and move them out of the way. And I'm going to hit the period key. And we're going to go ahead right here to the modifier section and add in a BEV, a bevel. Bring my segments up to maybe like 3, and then bring that in. Now we'll go back. I'm going to click here. Notice I'm clicked. So we're going to go ahead and take this cube right here and delete it. I'm going to take this cube here, and I'm going to call it particle. And then we're going to go back to our icosphere, which is really geo. I don't know where he exists, but we have this icosphere here. Now, a bit of a sidebar here. Here in the outliner, make sure you click on the object that has the geometry nodes workspace in it. In my case, I had one that said icosphere because that's where I started when I started this tutorial. Yours might be called geo, but make sure, like when I click on particle, no geometry nodes because there's no geometry nodes on it. But be sure you click on whatever you titled it. Mine was icosphere. It was meant to be geo, but be sure you click on the right one and then drag in your objects. Now I'm going to take the particle and drag it into my instance on points. And then we're going to plug geometry into instance, and then we can bring that scale down a little bit. Now we're here, nice and beveled cubes, and then you can go here to the particle and edit that bevel whenever you want to. So we'll go back to Icosphere. I'm going to go here and just delete the original Geo on Icosphere. I'm going to call him Geo, just to keep things nice and clear. So here on the Geo, we have all of this now, but I want to add some variation in the scale and get more control with what we're doing. So I want to be able to delete a bunch of what's going on here. I hope that made sense. It probably didn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these guys and move them over, and I want to start to delete some of the original geometry, because if I just go here and I bypass this, this guy exists to house our particles. And I want to start deleting some of these particles so I can replace it. So what I'm going to do is bring that back. And we're going to get in a separate geometry. And he's another gatekeeper node. He's going, hey, okay, I exist now to allow you to start to delete faces and delete points to create gaps and holes in the geometry. And I want to start deleting points because points are holding our cubes. And so just to show you how this works, we're going to get a random value. This particular part, you don't have to follow along, just kind of view it. I'm going to go from float to Boolean. And then what it does is, again, it allows you to start deleting geometry. We're not actually deleting particles. Technically, we are effectively, but we're actually deleting the geometry that the particles are hanging on to. And that's what this node allows you to do. So if you ever want to cut holes in something, and you can use textures to cut holes, which opens up a billion possibilities, we could do that. So we're going to use a brick texture to cut the holes. So BRI, Shift A, brick texture, plug that into the selection. And again, we're deleting points. You can see something happening here. You can start to see it more now. That is literally the brick texture working. So you can see it. What I'm going to do is get a color ramp so that we can control it farther. The color ramp will always allow you to do more. So let me show you physically, visually, what is about to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and hide him and show here. So I'm going to get a fresh brick texture. Don't follow along here. I'm just kind of showing you what's about to happen. So we have our brick texture. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to delete the mortar. We're going to take our brick width and we're going to make it equal. So we have squares. We're going to bring our frequency to 1. And then we're going to bring this in to start deleting things in a square way. So there might be like a bunch of particles within the black. So the white is basically going to be where geometry is visible. The black is deleting. So now we're going to do that here. So let's go ahead and bring that mortar size down. Both mortars, bring it to 0. Bring your offset to the left so that they're not crisscross, but they're actually on top of each other. Brick width and brick height, let's go 0.5. And then now we could start deleting things in a square manner to get that really cool vibe that we want to go for. So there it is. That now it's happening. So I want to bring it to 0.7. That's the initial scale. Now, if you want to delete exactly half of everything, here in the position, you'll do 0.5, and that will delete half of the faces so that you kind of have an even deletion. Now, this whole process opened up another opportunity for us. So I'm going to hit the tilde key, and I'll go to the top. So notice something here. See this little inverted guy? If I plug inverted into points, it now shows the opposite. So see where it's empty? I'm going to put the other selection here, and it'll show what was empty. So it's the inverted. This guy, he allows you to access these empty parts, these deleted parts, which means now I can go ahead right here in this instance on points. I'm going to hit Shift D. I'm going to take this value and hit Shift D and then plug him into the scale again. So now we can put another instance. We can now instance a completely new object, any object we want, now in these empty spaces. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug inverted into points. So this inverted, we have these empty points. This is the socket that it's going to exist in. And then in our case, we're just going to reuse our beveled cube. So plug him into instance. And then, how do we see it? We need to get the magic join geometry node. And he just allows you to join all these different things. And it really doesn't matter where he gets plugged. I mean, it doesn't matter where this string goes. He just has to be there. Now we're back, but watch this. Isn't that cool? You can do anything you want now with that open space. Now, these guys are too small. I just want them to be small enough to be noticeable that they're smaller. And then, of course, this doesn't just allow us to instance things in that open space. We can now actually manipulate things only in that open space. So I want to actually take these smaller ones and bring them up a little bit. That gatekeeper node is going to be the transform geometry node, and we'll put him here. And then right here on translation, which means like its position, just bring it up. And now that allows a little bit of difference in my case, I like to say it adds a little bit of chaos. So here we go. Now we've created something really, really cool. And then what we can do is, see how it looks animated. Let's go back to our noise texture. Now we have built out this entire thing. Now the next thing I want to do is go and animate this really quick, or animate our camera movement. So I'm gonna hit the tilde key. It's right above the tab key. I'm gonna click front just to make sure I'm in the right spot. I'm gonna click him, and we know the box rule here. So I'm gonna hit M, new collection, loop. Then I'm gonna hit Shift A, collection instance, loop. I'm gonna click on the little move tool, hold down Control, and snap it to the edge here. So see that? There's a gap, no gap, that's too far, right there, right when these last ones are crossing over each other. And then I'm gonna hit Alt D, move that over, and you'll start to get better at this the more you do it. And then I'm gonna hit Alt D one more time. And then we're just gonna keep double checking here. Now we have this. I think that's enough. And then from my original design, I know I'm gonna need to hit Alt D one more time on this scene and then bring it to the left. So I think I did it perfectly there. Yeah, okay. Now this whole scene is ready. I'm gonna hit the tilde key, click on the front, and we're gonna go ahead and get our camera. Now remember in the beginning, we scaled within geometry nodes by 20, which means physically in this space, it's going to be scaled by 10. So the beginning where this camera needs to go on the Y needs to be a -10. Now he is perfectly where he needs to be. So if I hit 0, he is at the exact beginning of this whole geometry situation. And the geometry stops here, which is the +10. So if I go ahead and tell it, hey, I actually want you to go all the way to here, I would click on my camera, and it looks like it needs to go to the +30, and that's just from my memory. So this would be something where you can go, hey, I need to check. So I want it to stop here, so I would just highlight this whole thing and hide it for a second so that you know exactly where to go. So in that case, I'm gonna bring my camera back to -10, and I'd be like, hey, I want it to go that far, so I want to go past this guy all the way to the end of this guy. So I'm gonna take him and hit H, just so I can have that visual reference. Then I'm gonna click on my camera, and let's go ahead and animate it now. So in your preferences, we're gonna go to the animation tab, and again, make sure you're at linear. So down here, see where it says 1, go back to frame 0, and I'm gonna keep it at 250 frames. It's gonna be a little over 10 seconds, I think. So we're gonna click on our camera, and then here in the location here on the Y, go here. We're gonna go to the end, and then I'm gonna hold down Control so it's snapping to the grid. And then I'm gonna go all the way to here, and then we can double check, are we right? Yeah, it says 30, that makes sense. If it says 31, that's not good. If it says 29, that's not good. It needs to be a whole number. We know the 30, snap it there, and then we can bring our old one back. So now we are working here. What I want to do is bring our guy up a little bit, make him look down, maybe make him look over here a little bit, make him look down a little bit more. And now we are traveling, and then if we go to the end of the animation here, it restarted. You couldn't tell, right? You couldn't tell it restarted because we can't actually see the edge around the bounds of our camera. And then actually on our focal length, we're going to do 35, which means, see how we can see the edge here? I'm going to go to the very end of my animation and go, okay, I either want to extend this out one more time, or in my case, just make him look down a little bit more. And then we can just double check. Perfect. We are done building and we have everything set up. I'm going to end the video here. The next thing we are going to do is add materials, actually animate the noise texture in Geometry Nodes, add some lighting, and we'll be done with this first Geometry Nodes lesson.